Glad you stayed with us. British Prime Minister Theresa May has warned that the United Kingdom and the European Union Brexit negotiations are now at an impasse and that there will be no progress until the European Union treats her proposal seriously. Theresa May was showing visible frustration and resentment towards the European Union since the Council rejected the British Chequers Plan, the Brexit proposal of Theresa May's government, but failed to present any strong alternative to that end. Now, the Chequers Plan could have allowed Britain to establish a common rule book to deal with the European Union member states to allow frictionless trade. But such a proposal, according to the European Union, would ultimately lead to the fragmentation of the single market, which is the principle on which the European Union stands adamant about. Similarly, such a plan would also be catastrophic for non-British citizens residing in Britain, since it would end free movement of people by putting up border checks. The United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union on the 29th of March 2019 and has to stick to European Union laws until that date. But after a bitter meeting with the European Union delegation in Salzburg, Austria, many analysts now fear that the road to a proper hard Brexit will require some more deliberations and negotiations. Theresa May has said that she demands that her country be treated with more respect from the European side, but that's just rhetoric to show dignity and pride on a grand stage. The reality is that Brexit is at the brink of failure, with political tensions brewing in the mainland within her own Conservative Party. The number of Conservatives who say that they won't vote for the Chequers Plan seems to be growing every day. And remember, any deal that Theresa May negotiates with the European Union has to get through the British Parliament as well. Theresa May has now warned the European Union that she was ready to walk away from the negotiations rather than accept what she called a bad deal that risks the Brexit referendum result. On the other hand, the European Council President Donald Tusk said that he admired Prime Minister Theresa May's tough and uncompromising approach, but he said that the logic of compromise can still be uplifted by presenting a proposal that is good for all. Britain's Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn and Deputy Leader Tom Watson have expressed their support for some members if they could push for a new Brexit vote. But a new referendum is now highly unlikely given the time and budget constraints. Now, to talk more on the stalemate in Brexit negotiations, we are now joined by journalist and analyst Adeel Khan from London. Adeel Sahab, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now, as you just heard, these talks are now at a stalemate, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere. Britain is supposed to leave the European Union next year, on 29th of March next year, as I just said. Now, why has it been so difficult for Prime Minister Theresa May to negotiate with the European Union? Now, she seems to have put all the blame on the European Union's rejection of the Chequers Plan. But what's going on? Who's to blame?
I think other than the question of blame, one has to begin to understand in the last few months what's happening politically in the UK. Because Theresa May has come under a lot of pressure, sort of having a very slight majority in Westminster. Mm-hmm. And that puts her under a lot of pressure because there might be a possibility of an early election. Mm-hmm. So that has to be kept into mind, that the kind of the local politics behind her trying to come up with this negotiating strategy to do kind of more homework before the discussion takes place.
Okay, now, but are you saying that the domestic politics in Britain are to blame for what happened with the European Union? You're not suggesting that.
No, I'm not saying that's to blame for it. I'm just saying that this has to be understood. Why is it that she has come up with the Chequers Plan in the first place?
Okay.
She needs to protect her local constituency, her local integrity in the UK, while at the same time present herself to the European Union leaders and say to them, this is a workable possibility. This is why she had to come up with all the homework for the Chequers Plan, which was perhaps not needed because there was already a suggestion from Brussels working out, which was more like akin to a kind of a hard border Canada plan type of arrangement.
Right.
So she chose to go in with this as a strategy to convince them that this might be possible, that a hard border, which is really very tricky for the UK to arrange.
Right,
So
yeah.
sort of, you know,
Of course,
history,
of course, you're talking about the hard border between Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland. That's what you're referring to.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Now, as far as the blame is concerned, now put things in perspective for us. How can they resolve this stalemate that is currently in place? Can each side give a little? It seems to me that's what is going to happen. How can they break out of this?
The thing is, each side has its own pressures. So the European leaders have their pressures of maintaining the 4-point freedom agenda, which makes people join the European Union. The 4 points, if I can remind your listeners, are freedom of movement of people, goods, services, and financial capital. So they think of these things together. Anyone who strives like Theresa May, who suggests, let's renegotiate on one aspect, which is goods. So that questions the very core of a European leader's idea of European freedom of movement itself.
Okay.
So they have to deal with that kind of background where they've not been able, they've taken for granted this assumption that we have a freedom of these 4 points for the last, sort of many decades.
Okay.
And now Theresa May is coming up with asking them to question their very strongly held ideas about what freedom of movement means. And she's saying, let's only talk about goods.
Oh, okay. Okay, so basically the European Union is not prepared to pick and choose out of those 4, right? They're saying we will not compromise on any of those 4.
They are not willing to perhaps question their ideas of, okay, let's take goods separately from the rest of the 3.
Yeah, yeah.
So that requires a lot of generosity from the European leaders to say, okay, we can do this. We can begin to think about goods-only trade-based agreement, but Theresa May wants to, as it were, as a strategy to avoid the hard border. She suggests that this, according to her plan, there can be a backstop agreement, what is called a backstop approach, to not just to the Northern Ireland, but to the whole of the UK.
Right.
Which basically means she's saying, let's just treat us as a customs agreement area.
Right.
Which is saying for goods basically that treat us as if we were in the single market.
Now the European Union still is optimistic. Many of them are saying that they want to vote on the new plan by November, which would basically ensure that Britain would leave the European Union by March of next year. Do you think, how optimistic are you about that? Do you think that Brexit is on track to happen by March of next year? Is it going to happen?
Some sort of arrangement will be agreed upon, probably on the 11th hour, and I think at this stage, until even in October, we can't expect much. There probably will be a special summit in November, where some, kind of decisions will be made around this particular issue, and especially to do with goods between Northern Ireland and the European Union, and the issue of the border. I think that will be resolved in November at some level, not permanently, but an agreement of some sort will be reached for the near future, for the transition period.
Okay. Now, Now, how about, well, there are fears being expressed within Britain that Brexit is going to prove catastrophic for the British economy. There are charges that Brexiteers lied to the people to get them to vote for Brexit. Talk about the economy. Is Brexit going to affect the British economy adversely, since it won't be a part of the single market anymore?
no doubt that is going to happen. It is already showing its signs in the UK economy at the moment, in different sectors of the economy, because of the uncertainty around the political atmosphere of negotiations. But when the actual Brexit will take place and the tariffs sort of the tariffs and the customs union will be implemented, I think it will really hit hard out on British business.
Right. Yeah, that's
especially to do with those who had access to the European market.
Right. Yeah.
And that would be not catastrophic, but it will be an issue which can lead to election results also being affected, who offers a better solution for the business owners of small business owners and medium business owners for Britain who sell to the European Union.
Right, exactly.
So that can be a negotiating point for the coming elections.
Yeah,
as well.
right. And it seems to me that the European Union can't be too flexible with Britain because they don't want to encourage any other members leaving the European Union or contemplating leaving the European Union. That has to be a concern on their part as well. Thank you, Adeel. Thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to talking to you again. That was Adeel Khan, our expert and journalist and analyst speaking from London. Of course, now it does seem as if British Prime Minister Theresa May is between a rock and a hard place, as they say, on the Brexit issue. Let's hope she's able to iron things out because everything depends on how the negotiations go with the European Union before Britain can actually exit on favourable terms on the 29th of March 2019. Let's see what happens. Of course, we'll keep you apprised of the developments. That's all the time we have for this particular edition of Beyond the News. Join us again tomorrow night for yet another edition of the programme. Until then, on behalf of our team here at Beyond the News, good night and good luck.